Russian leader Vladimir Putin recently met with China's President Xi Jinping in Uzbekistan, with China's leader expressing, quote, concerns and questions about the war. Elizabeth Wishnick is a senior research scientist at CNA. Elizabeth, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
So the tone of this meeting was much different than the last time they met in February, because at that time, the two said that there was, quote, a no-limits friendship. So this latest meeting signals there maybe are limits to that friendship.
Well, I think we previously misunderstood what no limits meant. It didn't mean that there were no parameters to this partnership. It was a way that the Chinese officials found to avoid discussing the prospect of an alliance. So the point of no limits was that there were no restrictions on what could take place within the context of the relationship. So it was not necessary to create a formal alliance. But that didn't mean that they didn't have their areas where they agreed to disagree. So I think we're just confronting some of those areas in this latest meeting.
So Xi didn't mention Ukraine in any of his public remarks. Is this surprising, and what does that say about how China views the war?
Well, I mean, to get back to your earlier question about the questions and concerns, we don't know what those refer to. He could have been concerned that Putin was facing losses on the battlefield, or could resort to the use of tactical nuclear weapons, or was facing greater domestic opposition. So just because he had questions and concerns doesn't mean that he is changing his line on the war. Because just a few days before she traveled to Uzbekistan, the number 3 leader in China had met with Russian officials and told them that China supported Russia's priorities in Ukraine. And now we have a Russian official in China discussing various strategic issues. So I think it's premature to say that China has shifted its position on Ukraine. And also, the February 4th agreement didn't discuss Ukraine either. So I think it's a sensitive issue for China, and they don't tend to include it in all public comments.
Elizabeth, both leaders at the summit talked about the world order. How would you say their views differ about that?
Well, China made a point of saying that it wanted to be a force for stability. And so I think that was a veiled criticism of Putin's approach to Ukraine, because China wants to play a role in global governance as a rule maker, and wants to be seen as a partner in that respect. And so we see China trying to be the adult in the room in a way, in terms of global order, making that claim. In the February 4th statement, we saw some differences too, because Russia has preference for a world order that would be multipolar, where it would play an important and equal role with other major countries, while China has, under Xi Jinping, has developed a concept of community of common destiny. And there would be a leader of this community, presumably, and that could be China. And Russia has been somewhat uncomfortable with that approach in terms of how the global community would be organized. But I think they do share a vision of a world that's safe for authoritarian regimes, and they do share certain common approaches that we have seen in the United Nations, and in terms of creating some new norms of behavior, like internet sovereignty, where the principle for information would be that states can control the flow of information rather than having a free flow of information.
Elizabeth, I wonder how much power and influence President Xi has over Putin. Would he be able to say to him, cut it out, enough's enough, end the war?
I don't think he could do that. First, for a number of reasons. First, the two countries have long stated their view of non-interference in the affairs of other states. And by other states, they mean authoritarian states. So I think she wouldn't take kindly if Putin said, cut it out in Xinjiang or stop threatening Taiwan. So I don't think that she could do that about Ukraine. And I think also that she agrees with Putin to the extent that that he sees NATO and the U.S. as the key threat to China. And
well, I want to ask you about India then, because India's leader Modi said publicly to Putin, quote, "Today's era is not an era of war, and I've spoken to you on the phone about this." Is this a shift for India?
Well, he said that, but he's still buying a lot of oil from Russia, and India participated for the first time in the Vostok military exercises in eastern Russia early September. So I think he might have been more forthright in his criticism, but we're not going to. I don't think we're going to see a major distancing of India from Russia either.
And Elizabeth, finally, this meeting also marked Xi's first foreign trip since the start of the pandemic. How significant is that? What message is he sending?
But I think it was interesting that he picked Central Asia as his first destination. And the first country he visited was Kazakhstan, which is where he unveiled his Belt and Road Initiative in 2013. And so I think we might see China trying to play a bigger role in Central Asia, which has always been a sensitive issue between China and Russia.
Elizabeth, we're out of time, though. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.